Amidst the desolation, however, there stood a lone figure, a man of immense power and unshakable conviction. He stood before the colossal creature with a calm demeanor, his hand held firmly behind his back with otherworldly energy coursing through his veins. The man's eyes blazed in bright light. And with a swift, fluid motion, he unleashed a devastating blast, completely annihilating anything in his way. Lushing jolted awake in the middle of class, his eyes bleary and unfocused. The taunting laughter of his classmates echoed in his ears, even the teacher sneered at him with contempt. The teacher pointed an accusatory finger at Lushing, his voice dripping with disdain. Claiming that no one will ever hire Lushing as a bricklayer, since the basic requirement of blood energy level is 0.8 for a bricklayer. As the class finally ended, Lushing's friend Ming approached him with concern for his well-being. He offered to take Lushing to the internet cafe and treat him to some snacks and games, hoping to lift his spirits. But Lushing was too drained from the constant nightmare that had been bothering him for quite some time. Unbeknownst to Lushing, fate had conspired to transport him into this isekai. He had been a diligent student, focused on acing his university entrance exam, but now he had to face an entirely different test of survival. Lushing couldn't help but notice the similarities between his old world and this new one. The only difference was the incredible level of martial arts that existed in this world. As Lucian gazed upon the giant screen broadcasting the recent victory of the 8th Legion, successfully defending another wave of monsters, just then, his reverie was shattered by the sight of a delivery woman carrying an enormous stack of packages with effortless ease. Lucian couldn't believe his eyes and envied her power. The sun was slowly sinking into the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city as Lucian trudged his way back to his old apartment. His eyes fell upon his mother in the living room, tenderly applying medicinal patches to his father's back. Despite the physical pain, his parents' faces lit up at the sight of their son. His father quickly got dressed, but the bandages and patches on his body betrayed the immense effort he had put in to provide for his family. With a gentle smile, Lu Xing suggested that his father invests in an acupuncture machine to alleviate his pain and promote better circulation. But his father, ever the stoic and strong-willed, simply flexed his bicep and joked that he was made of steel and could withstand any pain. Suddenly, his father took out 2 small containers, which he presented to Lushing. It was a new supplement that cost a staggering 20,000, a fortune for a family like theirs. Overwhelmed by his father's selfless gesture, Lushing struggled to hold back his tears and bit his lips. As Lushing's parents questioned whether his blood energy levels had reached the desired 0.85 mark, he felt a knot of anxiety form in his stomach. He sprinted to his room without wasting a moment, knowing that every second counted. With determination etched on his face, Lushing immediately began the Bodhi strengthening technique. The technique was a fusion of ancient yoga, martial arts, and judo, expertly adapted to create a powerful and effective method for beginners to build a solid foundation. Lushing took a deep breath before launching into an explanation of the cataclysmic event that had changed the world. 3 centuries ago, the world had been plunged into chaos as monstrous creatures erupted from the sky and the ground, rendering modern weapons useless. In the face of this unprecedented threat, humanity had undergone a genetic mutation, unleashing unimaginable power and ushering in a new age of martial arts. But even with these newfound abilities, the human race had found themselves at a massive disadvantage against the monsters that threatened their very existence. Cities fell on a daily basis, and the human race was forced to retreat and regroup. After 3 consecutive rounds of the grueling body strengthening technique, Lushing's energy had been completely sapped. Despite his best efforts, his blood energy level had remained unchanged. Sweat poured down his face as he struggled to catch his breath, his determination unwavering even in the face of such adversity. He knew that his parents had sacrificed so much for him, and he refused to let them down now. Grimacing with effort, he slowly rose to his feet, but as he stood there, wavering on unsteady legs, he suddenly felt a wave of dizziness sweep over him. The world spun around him, followed by his collapsing onto the ground. Lushing woke up, but what he saw around him was not the familiar surroundings of his bedroom. Instead, he found himself in a desolate wasteland of his familiar nightmare. Lushing tried to wake himself up from this nightmare but to no avail. And then, a zombie leaped toward Lushing, its gruesome mouth inches away from his face. In the past few nights, Lushing had run from this monster in terror, but this time, something inside him snapped. With a primal roar, he unleashed all the energy he could muster into his legs and kicked the zombie away. Not content to stop there, Lushing grabbed a nearby rock and began beating the undead creature mercilessly, striking it again and again until its body finally gave way, leaving behind a strange black liquid that oozed toward him. As he watched the viscous liquid approach, a torrent of unfamiliar memories flooded Lucian's mind, vivid and disorienting. He saw an unknown man, speaking to a friend on the beach, about his desire to join the elite defensive squad. The man soon donned a military uniform and became a member of the prestigious base number 1359, where he underwent rigorous training. Then, a chaotic memory of the base being breached by monstrous creatures. In this sudden onslaught of memories, Lushing felt his heart racing, struggling to come to grips with the deluge of information. Lu Xing stood in disbelief, wondering how he had managed to retain the memories of the men he had just defeated in their zombie form. His hand trembled uncontrollably, unaware of the powerful aura surrounding him. Just as he was lost in thought, a sudden attack came from behind. Without missing a beat, Lu Xing spun around and with a single fluid motion, snapped the head off the zombie with graceful movement, sending its body collapsing to the ground in a heap. As the lifeless corpse began to dissolve into a dark, viscous fluid, Lushing felt a strange sense of energy pulsing through his veins. With a sudden rush of power coursing through his body, Lushing realized that he not only had the ability to retain the memories of those he defeated, but he could also absorb their power. Lushing couldn't believe what he was experiencing. He remembered that he was in the realm of his dreams. He took a deep breath and wondered only if everything was real. Despite the surreal nature of his dream, Lushing couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important he needed to discover. The memory of the military base number 1359 lingered in his mind once again, teasing him with the possibility of unlocking the secrets of this strange world. Suddenly, the dream became disoriented. He was pulled back into the real world, where his sister was calling him to dinner. Lu Qinghe, the only younger sister of Lushing, took a closer look at Lushing, currently glistening with sweat. The chiseled body underneath the shirt made her blush. She quickly turned around and walked away. Lushing recollected the days of his youth when he and his sister were inseparable, but the dynamics between them shifted dramatically after the first evaluation test, which showed the result to be an astonishing blood energy level of 1 and power level of 100. It was not unexpected, given that his sister was a prodigy, destined for a brilliant future. Lushing took a deep breath, then he gazed upon his reflection in the mirror and beheld his exquisitely sculpted physique, feeling not a shred of exhaustion, and all the memories and power he gained from the dream were carried over, causing him to ponder if he could truly manifest the power of his subconscious dreams into the real world. Shrugging off his ruminations, Lushing walked over to the dinner table. At the table, he devoured the food, one bowl of rice after another, as if his gut were akin to a black hole. With nothing left on the table, he nervously withdrew his arms, but his father snatched his bowl and implored his mother to cook more rice and prepare additional dishes. The father seemed elated by his son's great appetite, and even his sister beamed a graceful smile. Following dinner, Lushing strode towards a nearby martial arts academy, where the instructor was a level 4 martial artist and a well-known figure in the city. The hierarchical structure of martial arts is as follows: a level 1 martial artist is deemed standard if their blood energy level is 1.5, and battle strength stands at 150. A level 2 martial artist surpasses this with a blood energy level of 15 and a battle strength of 1,500. A level 3 martial artist ups the ante with a blood energy level of 100 and a battle strength of 10,000, while a level 4 martial artist must exceed a blood energy level of 200 and a battle strength of 100,000. As Lushing approached the reception desk, he inquired about undergoing a test to assess his blood energy level and battle strength, despite her awareness that he may not hail from a wealthy background. The receptionist maintained her professionalism. In the training room, Lushing rested his hand on a gleaming crystal ball to gauge his blood energy level. To his astonishment, it had skyrocketed to 0.963, a significant improvement from his previous score of 0.7. Sensing an opportunity to prove himself, he turned his attention to another device, curious about his battle strength. He took a deep breath and assumed the combat form he had memorized from the recollections of 2 fallen soldiers. With fluid movements, he struck out, and his battle strength registered an impressive 113. The magnitude of his improvement within a mere hour left Lucian incredulous. He pondered what heights he could achieve if he spent a full 10 hours honing his abilities within the dream realm. As he lay in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling and counting a menagerie of more than 10,000 sheep, he found himself unable to fall asleep. Frustrated and restless, he rose and flipped on the light switch, resolving to undertake some additional exercises. He assumed his stance, preparing to perform the body-strengthening technique. But something felt odd. He executed unfamiliar movements, doing these movements subconsciously as if channeling the memory of the fallen soldier. As Lucian continued to implement the new movements, he discovered that there were over 200 additional maneuvers. Every time he practiced, he felt a distinct surge of energy coursing through him. It was not only the body-strengthening technique that benefited from this new knowledge. His breathing technique also experienced a noticeable enhancement. A single session felt like it had granted him years of training results, leaving him astounded at his newfound prowess. As Lucian completed the entire technique, he experienced a sensation akin to his soul being wrenched from his body. He felt extreme hunger, and his body's water content seemed to have evaporated. It was clear to him that regular food would not suffice. He required high-quality supplements to maintain his newfound strength. However, the cost of these supplements was astronomical, and he recognized that he would need to find a means of earning money to fund his ongoing growth. The next day, Lucian found himself in the school gym, ready for the combat lesson. The teacher, Mr. Zhong, was a level 2 martial artist who had faced a monster head-on and bore the scars to prove it. However, Lucian couldn't help but feel that the movements and techniques Mr. Zhong was presenting were too simplistic and lacked power compared to what he had learned in his dreams. As Mr. Zhang finished his demonstration, he called upon one of the most popular students in the school, Yang, to spar with him. Yang was not only handsome, but also the top student in his class, and his family was incredibly wealthy. Yang had become quite the supplement connoisseur, and his blood energy level had soared to an impressive 1.2. After sparring, Mr. Zhong praised Yang's movements, promising additional feedback after class. But despite the teacher's compliments, Yang couldn't help but sneer at the words in his mind. Mr. Zhong then asked if anyone was brave enough to spar with Yang, but all the students avoided eye contact, leaving him disappointed. However, just as Mr. Zhong's disappointment began to show, his gaze met Lu Xing's piercing stare. In Lu Xing's eyes, Yang could see a formidable aura, one that he had only ever witnessed in those who had tasted the bitter reality of death. Ming desperately tried to persuade Lu Xing to forfeit, fearing that his friend would suffer serious injuries. However, Lu Xing merely smiled and reassured Ming that he had nothing to worry about. As he stood in the gym, Yang arrogantly raised his hand and sneered at Lu Xing, warning him to steer clear of his hand lest it shatters. Undeterred, Lu Xing graciously thanked Yang for his advice and declared that he was ready to fight. Suddenly, Yang lunged at him with the intent of ending the match with a single punch. But much to his astonishment, Lu Xing effortlessly evaded the attack and landed a precise blow to Yang's face, sending him hurtling to the opposite end of the room. As Mr. Zhang frantically rushed over to check on Yang's well-being, the other students looked on in shock and awe. It was inconceivable that Yang had been defeated with a single punch. Yang is quickly whisked away from the gym on a stretcher, leaving behind a stunned and bewildered crowd. Lu Xing, meanwhile, felt a sense of remorse for his actions and apologized to Mr. Zhang for what had transpired. To his surprise, Mr. Zhang remained silent for a few moments before placing a reassuring hand on Lu Xing's shoulder. After a brief exchange, Mr. Zhang invited Lu Xing to his office. The office was simple, with only the potted plant and a battle strength testing machine. With a stern expression on his face, Mr. Zhong demanded to know if Lu Xing had been using any illegal steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, which were strictly prohibited by the school due to their damaging effects on the body, demanding Lu Xing to prove it. In response, Lu Xing calmly rested his hand on the crystal ball. A sudden jolt of electricity filled the room, and the machine displayed a blood energy level of 1.532, effectively classifying Lucian as a level 1 martial artist. Mr. Zhong was taken aback by this revelation. The mere term, prodigy, seemed insufficient to capture the immense talent possessed by Lucien, who at the age of just 18 had already achieved the rank of a formal level 1 martial artist. Mr. Zhong struggled to gather his thoughts when he was suddenly jolted out of his reverie by a loud noise. The next thing he knew, the battle strength testing machine was in pieces, as was the potted plant. Despite being saddened by the loss of his beloved plant, Mr. Zhong couldn't help but be awestruck by Lu Xing's incredible strength. After a moment of stunned silence, Mr. Zhong learned that just 2 weeks prior, Lu Xing had only possessed a blood energy level of 0.8. He leaped to his feet in disbelief, amazed that Lu Xing had managed to achieve such incredible feats in just a fortnight. Mr. Zhong eagerly asked if Lu Xing was from a renowned family or if he had been taught by a grandmaster. To his surprise, Lu Xing revealed that he was neither born into nobility nor had he received any formal training. Mr. Zhong reflected on his own past experiences, reminiscing about how he had become a level 2 martial artist before joining the army. He remembered the lessons he had learned on the battlefield, where he had come to the realization that people like him could never hope to triumph over the monsters. The sheer strength and power of those beasts were beyond human comprehension, and the only individuals capable of standing against them were those with even greater strength, individuals like Lu Xing. He should be placed in the elite class and given access to the very best educational resources available. However, Lu Xing politely declined the offer, as he knew that no amount of education could compare to the opportunities he could create in his dreams. As Mr. Zhang continued to implore Lu Xing, he spoke with an air of conviction that bordered on the theatrical. He assured Lu Xing that the school would always have his back, but Lu Xing, wary of empty promises, made 2 firm requests: a scholarship application and the freedom to attend class on his own terms. Mr. Zhong seemed to understand Lu Xing's struggle, but he quickly regained his composure and nodded sagely. He knew that obtaining a scholarship would take some time, so he took matters into his own hands. With a flourish, Mr. Zhong produced his bank card and handed it to Lu Xing, telling him to pay him back whenever he could. Lu Xing was taken aback by this unexpected display of generosity. As Lu Xing walked out of Mr. Zhong's office, his heart was racing with anticipation. The prospect of encountering another prodigy was enough to send shivers down his spine. To think that there was someone else out there with level 2 martial arts battle strength at the tender age of 18 was simply mind-boggling. He saw the young man as a secret weapon, a powerful asset that could stun the other schools on exam day. But it wasn't just about winning a competition. Mr. Zhong had grander aspirations for Lu Xing. He spoke of that place, a hallowed ground that had remained elusive for so many years. As Lu Xing stood before the imposing gates of the Renxing pharmacy, he couldn't help but feel a pang of envy as he watched a mother purchase expensive supplements for her daughter. He knew all too well the harsh reality of the martial arts world, that wealth and privilege often pave the way for success. He was all too aware of the obstacles in his path. His thoughts turned to his younger sister, who was still trapped in the same cycle of poverty and hardship dragged down by him. In that moment, Lu Xing felt like a fish trapped in a small tank, yearning for the vast ocean beyond. But he couldn't help but cling to the comfort and familiarity of his water tank. With a newfound sense of purpose, Lu Xing felt as though he had broken through the confines of his old life and stepped into a brave new world. The opportunities that lay ahead of him were boundless, and he was determined to seize them with both hands. It was as if he had broken through a bottleneck that had been holding him back. His memories, techniques, and combat experience now seemed clearer than ever before, and he was able to absorb them as his own. As he walked through the bustling streets of the city, Lu Xing couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and determination. With a sense of purpose burning in his heart, Lu Xing purchased an acupuncture machine for his father, supplements for his sister, and groceries for his mother. In Lu Xing's dream realm, he moved with the grace of a seasoned warrior, effortlessly taking down another zombie with a single swift strike. The memories that flooded his mind led him ever closer to his destination, Base 1359. As he battled wave after wave of the undead, finally, he arrived at the base itself and was awestruck by the massive walls that surrounded it. The walls were at least 20 meters thick, and Lu Xing couldn't help but wonder what kind of attack could possibly breach such fortifications. If this world, with its advanced martial arts and evolved civilization, was still so vulnerable in the face of the monsters, what hope was there for his own world? As he explored the city within the walls, Lucian's eyes were drawn to a towering building that seemed to be the command center. Within its walls, he caught a glimpse of a man dressed all in white, his face expressionless, and with only one arm. Out of nowhere, Lucian felt an immense surge of killing intent. It was as if the very air itself had thickened with the weight of this impending danger. The lethal energy emanating from the commanding center shook him on the ground. As Lucian stood there, still reeling from the shock of the man's killing intent, he knew in his gut that he shouldn't linger in that place. He retreated slowly, eyes darting around for any sign of danger, and eventually stumbled upon a room unlike any other he had seen in the base. As he approached a machine in the center of the room, his hand rested on the machine, and suddenly it sprang to life, emitting a soft hum. A moment later, a holographic image flickered into existence before him, the image of a female AI. Lucian was stunned when he heard the woman speak his language. The AI introduced herself as a product from the Tianeng Tech, 16th generation support artificial intelligence. Her name is AI, who is responsible for the network in base 1359. Lucian requested to see the most recent news. He couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden within this mysterious base. As soon as Lucian made his request, I sprang into action. With the speed and efficiency that only an artificial intelligence could muster, she conjured up a series of tabs that displayed the latest and greatest news from around the galaxy. I was a 16th generation support AI from Tianeng Tech, and her programming was second to none. The first tab that popped up was a doozy. In June of the martial year 11024, Base 1359 had successfully launched its 58th exploration spaceship in search of a suitable planet. But the news wasn't all good. The second tab that appeared informed Lucian that in July, Base 105 had fallen. It was a stark reminder that even with all their technology and martial prowess, humanity was still vulnerable to the dangers of the monsters. And speaking of martial prowess, the third tab that I summoned up was a real shocker. Apparently, General Sun Kong had just become the 472nd level 10 martial artist. Lucian was amazed. He had no idea that there were so many level 10 martial artists out there. And yet, even with all that power, humanity was still unable to protect its own planet, forcing them to abandon it. Lucian's heart sank as he absorbed the devastating news. The human civilization had been completely wiped out. No reports or signals were coming from the exploration spaceship, indicating that there was no hope for their survival. It was a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the universe, where even the mightiest civilizations could be reduced to nothing in the blink of an eye. With a heavy heart, Lucian turned to AI for some solace. He asked her to provide him with the history of this planet, hoping to learn something from their demise. As the data streams began to flow, as he delved deeper into the planet's past, Lucian's shock only grew. The timeline of events that I was rendering for him was eerily similar to the history of his own world. Monsters erupting from all over the world, the emergence of the first martial artist with interpower in the 34th martial art year, and the establishment of the Martial Art Association, all of these were events that had happened in Lucian's own world as well. Astonished and disoriented, Lucian came to the realization that the events he had just witnessed were not a glimpse of an alternate world, but a shocking revelation about the fate of his own world, thousands of years in the future. A chill ran down his spine as he contemplated the implications of this knowledge. But even in the face of such bleak prospects, Lucian refused to lose hope. Perhaps this was just a coincidence or a parallel universe, with a renewed sense of purpose. Lucian turned his attention to gathering more information. He asked AI to search for personal details about himself and his family, but his hopes were soon dashed when he discovered that he had passed away at a young age, just 28 years old, in the martial year 325. His curiosity was piqued, and he then attempted to search for information about his younger sister. But he was thwarted by the system, which demanded that he prove his gene blood before he could register for access. Puzzled and frustrated, Lucian wondered how he could provide the necessary blood sample. At that moment, I came to the rescue, biting onto Lucian's finger and collecting the required blood sample. Lucian couldn't help but be amazed at the sheer wildness of the future, where even artificial intelligence had become capable of such unorthodox behavior. As Ai's expression changed and red windows started popping up, Lucian couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. But before he could even ask, his personal information was suddenly refreshed, revealing that he had been a level 4 martial artist, a top graduate of the White River Academy, and a proud alumnus of the White River Martial University. After graduation, he joined the army and valiantly fought in battle, until his untimely death at the age of 37 in a martial year of 334. Lucian was dumbfounded. He had always believed that he was a prodigy, destined for greatness and fame. But now he realized that he was just one among many, a small cog in the vast machinery of history didn't even cause a small rabble. Lucian looked at the details with a discerning eye, and to his dismay, he discovered some flaws. The record showed that he had achieved a commendable score in the exam, although a decent score if just solely relying on basic training. He was certain that if he incorporated the ability of his dream realm, his scores would skyrocket to unprecedented heights. Lucian, being an unparalleled warrior, was not content with mediocrity. He knew that he was destined for greatness and that his future was not confined to this mundane reality. Lucian had an unyielding conviction within him to become the strongest person and be the person who alters history.